Today's date is August 21st, 2003. This is the New Westminster Sports Oral History Project. The interviewee is Earle Peterson. All right, so Earle, what is your full name?
Earle Frederick William Peterson.
And tell me your date and place of birth.
New Westminster, August 29th, 1930.
1930. And your marital status?
Married. I have 2 children, Debbie and Brett, and a couple of grandchildren.
Oh, good, good. Where were your parents from?
My father was from Wisconsin, and my mother was from Southampton, England.
And they moved to New Westminster when?
That would probably have been in the mid-30s. My mother arrived from England in 1904, and my father came to where would it have been? Up around Dewdney, up in that area, in the logging mills around 1906.
Oh, really? That early, hey?
Mm-hmm.
1906. Oh, Dewdney Trunk area, like Maple Ridge, that sort of area? Or okay.
Harrison Hot Springs, Harrison Mills.
Agassiz. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how long were you a New Westminster resident?
Right up until about 1980.
Oh, that long.
I lived in New Westminster all my life. Yeah.
Right. And tell me your current address.
Current address is number 708111 Saunders Road, Richmond, BC.
Good. All right, getting into the sports section. First, your general sort of sports involvement. So how old were you when you first began playing sports of any kind?
Probably 10, 11, in that 10, 11, 12, in that range. Mm-hmm. And that would have been in minor hockey in New Westminster.
Right. So was hockey sort of your favorite type of sport?
No, it's where I gained a little bit of notoriety, but no, I enjoyed all of them. Lacrosse and softball and baseball, hockey.
Right.
But hockey was rather new, having started in New Westminster in the very early 40s.
Oh, okay. And that would have been minor hockey then?
That would be the Minor Hockey Association.
Right.
And that was originally, I believe, formed by Oscar Swanson, Bill Mott, a couple of fellows like that started minor hockey in New Westminster. And that would have been in the early 40s.
And that would have been, okay, and so when you began, that was the early 40s, when you began as well. And, kind of briefly give me sort of chronology of your career as a hockey player.
Well, starting out in the minor hockey as a peewee, and then going through the bantam and juvenile, then into, I didn't play junior, I went directly from juvenile into the Hillside Cubs organization, which was a senior B. And the year I played with them, we won the Western Canada Championship. And then the next year, in 1948-49, I went to Lethbridge. And I had signed with the New York Rangers, and Lethbridge was their junior farm team in the Western Canada Hockey League. And then from there to Baltimore in the American League, and then after a few injuries came back, played in Kerrisdale in Senior A, and then started coaching in the New Westminster organization.
Started coaching. So when you first began as a youngster, what were the teams? Was there like a New Westminster League, or were you with other cities in the area?
To the best of my knowledge, there was the original teams that Bill Mott and Oscar Swanson, Vern Inslee started were peewees, and they were called the Blues and the Whites, and they wore blue and white Toronto Maple Leaf uniforms. And then there was so much interest from other kids that they then branched out and got into other teams, the Blackhawks, Detroit, and I think I played on the Detroit team. I'm not quite sure.
Right.
And they were strictly just a New Westminster minor hockey league.
Really?
It wasn't until 4 or 5 years later that the teams they started picking rep teams or the better players, and then they started playing in the local Lower Mainland championships and then the BC championships.
Right. So would you have been involved in that, or would you have been you would have?
I can remember in Bantam we had a team that went to Nanaimo and played for the Lower Mainland Championship. I don't know if we won or not. I can't remember, but I know that one of the members of the Nanaimo team was Bob Highmarsh, Dr. Bob Highmarsh, who became a very important figure in Olympic hockey. And Ed Downey was our coach, and he was a noted athlete with the Salmon Bellies, and he also played with the Seattle Ironmen in hockey in the Pacific Coast League. He was our coach, and then there were other championship or other attempts at a championship team with other juvenile and midget teams, but that's the Bantam Nanaimo team that I remember the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when you were when did you sort of switch from it just being sort of a fun game to something that you took seriously?
Well, that would be, I guess, when I was drafted by the Rangers and went to play in Alberta, and this was, living in New Westminster all my life. This was my first time away from home, and then it got to be a little bit more serious business-like than it was, playing local hockey. And from there, I spent a full year in Lethbridge, and that team played against the Edmonton Canadians, Moose Jaw Canucks, Regina Pats, Medicine Hat Tigers, where Trevor Linden now came from. And from then, after a training camp in Winnipeg with the Rangers, then I went to Baltimore, and then it became really quite serious.
Was it? Yeah. And when you say serious, I mean, this was quite a few years ago. Was it
a long time ago.
I mean, and this would be late 40s?
This would be 1947, 48.
Right.
No, 48, 49.
Right.
I was 18. I just turned 19.
Right. And even back then, in terms of professionalism, it was business-like, you're saying.
Yeah, you signed a money contract. It wasn't very much. I think as a rookie, we all made the same amount of money, which was $95 a week, and including room and board. And usually, when you got paid every week, you'd go downtown and buy clothes, and you never had any money. But it was more serious, and you had to kind of produce if you wanted to be a hockey player. And I guess there were a number of players who eventually became quite good NHL players. Gump Worsley was playing for the New York Rovers at the time. There was the New York Rovers, Boston Olympics, Atlantic City Seahawks, and the Baltimore Clippers.
Right.
It was basically a rookie league, but there were a lot of the NHL players who had been sent down, and then there were a lot of the rookies who were really wanting to get up there. So it was kind of what they refer today as kind of a meat league. It was a pretty rough.
I bet.
Rough league, yeah.
People trying to make an impression.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you got signed, I mean, was this a big thing for New Westminster? A new thing?
Well, it was big for me. I don't think it was too many people paid all that much attention, but I think I was the first product from the New Westminster Minor Hockey Association that ever signed with an NHL club. There were others that were good hockey players that went to college and later on sign with other clubs, but I think I was the first one.
Right. Well, that's an honor.
Yeah, well, to me it was. To everybody else, I don't think it made much impression, but
Right.
it was good.
Yeah. Tell me what it was like. I mean, in terms of playing hockey in New Westminster, there was only 2 rinks. Am I right?
No, there was only 1 rink.
There's only one rink.
It wasn't until recently, in the last 20 years, I guess, that there's been 2 rinks. But there was the arena, and as a kid, as kids do today, we had to get there at 5:30 in the morning and get on the ice for an hour, and that would be the extent of your ice time. You'd get 1 hour a week, and
really,
it was pretty hard to become a hockey player. And it wasn't, I think, until I started to rink rat up at the arena that I got in more skating and became more aware of hockey. And we would get maybe 20 hours a week on the ice, which
that's a lot.
Which helped. You figure that the prairie kids were getting that right from when they were 6 years old. But we would be out there scraping ice, which was good for your skating ability. And this is before they had the Zambonis. We used to go out and scrape with big, heavy steel scrapers, scrape all the excess snow off. Then they would come with a big barrel with hot water and spray the ice. And we would go out with squeegees and squeeze that water off. And we do this 3 times during a hockey game, and then have to do it before and after. So, at that time, if you wanted to become a hockey player, you really had to be a rink rat.
A rink rat meaning like a mall rat. You
had to hang around and be there if there was ice carnival or a hockey game, and you'd be there early in the morning or late at night. You couldn't be there all the time if you're going to school, which I was, but right after school I'd be up there until 10:30 at night, until after the hockey game was over.
Really?
And then after the hockey game was over, we'd all get into our hockey gear and go out and play a couple hours at shinny. And again, that's where you learned a lot that you didn't learn in minor hockey when you're only playing once a week for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. And when would you go home? Would you have supper at home and then come back?
And then they would come to the game, and or we would, in between periods, go and get a hot dog and a Coke, and then sit and watch the game, put our skates back on, get out and scrape for the next period.
Mm. And so when you say watch the game, you're talking older kids?
No, this would be, at that time, this would have been the New Westminster Royals, the senior team, which was run by, the manager was, his last name was Ken McKenzie was his name. Babe Pratt was the coach. Max McNabb became a coach. A lot of good hockey players played in New Westminster. It was in the Pacific Coast League, which encompassed Seattle Ironmen, Tacoma Rockets, I think the Victoria Cougars played in there, the Vancouver Canucks, and the New Westminster Royals. And this was pretty good hockey, but this was just before I think that it finally packed in 4 or 5 years before they actually got into the NHL hockey. The Canucks were playing in a different league at that time.
Oh, I see. And so would that have been considered amateur, fully amateur, or?
Well, no, it was. Well, these guys did it for a living, so I guess it would be pro hockey on a level of probably the American Hockey League or the Eastern Hockey League. It was called the Pacific Coast Hockey League.
Right.
That's when there were only six teams in the NHL, so it wasn't as if this was a farm club where guys went up and down, but there was some pretty good hockey. And like in the Canucks organization, Bathgate, Phil Maloney, all these guys played in it. So.
Right. And so you didn't play for the Royals then, am I right? You
No.
skipped it.
No.
Sort of.
I went right from juvenile into junior, or juvenile into senior B, into junior, and then into the pro leagues.
Right, right. What were the Hillside Cubs?
Hillside Cubs were, first of all, a junior team in Westminster that played with the old White Spots and Nanaimo Clippers, Victoria. I think they were still called Cougars. It was a 4-team junior league, and it was a pretty good league. And then there didn't seem to be enough junior hockey players to keep it going because the minor hockey associations were not like they are today. There just wasn't enough feeder teams coming up. So then they went into the Senior B League, which encompassed those same teams and UVC, but they allowed, I think, 4 or 5 over 21-year-old players.
Oh.
And that's when they started bringing in some pretty good senior amateur players. And I think the first year I played, Paul Thompson, who coached the Chicago Blackhawks, was the coach of the Hillside Cubs. And,
okay.
He just did it for 1 year, but I was kind of a thrill to play with him.
Well, it shows sort of the caliber of play as well.
Yeah, of course, he was on his way down, too. You know, he had coached in the NHL, and he probably just retired. But it was pretty good hockey, and I think if there's still a lot of people out there today that remember the old Hillside Cubs. And
right.
And it was the only game in town other than the Salmon Bellies, so.
Right. And I guess the Hillside Cubs are all in reference to the hill, right? Oh, yes, the Adnecks. Can't forget the Adnecks. So hockey was obviously a big part of your sports career, if you want to call it.
In the early times, yeah.
In the early times. Tell me a little bit about coaching.
Well, coaching was probably the thing that I enjoyed most, other than refereeing, which I did for a while too. But coaching, I started out with the Pee Wee and rep teams, and basically because my son was playing and he was a good hockey player, and so we went through the Pee Wee and the Bantam, and I think into midget, and then I started coaching, which was another junior hockey team, which was called the Junior Royals.
Okay.
And they again played in the local 4-team league with Vancouver, Victoria, and Nanaimo, and also UBC played. And I guess that was for 3 or 4 years, and we had some pretty good players, and we were always poor, as most of the amateur teams in New Westminster have been, as long as I can remember. I know our first set of uniforms were an old Holy set we were given by the Senior Royals, and then we used those and got by, and then we were sponsored by the New Westminster Elks, BPO number 3, and they got us brand new uniforms. We really looked great, and didn't play all that well, but we looked good. And from then, I think I just sort of, after the juniors, sort of packed it in. I got married, and a whole different life, began then.
Totally,
and,
totally.
Yeah.
And did you ref then as well while you were coaching?
Just before I was coaching, I was refereeing in the New Westminster Industrial League, along with Bill Wilkes and Ed Downey and Bill Winter, and that was a Sunday morning league, and I think we got $15 a game for refereeing, and I did that for 3 or 4 years, and really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed refereeing and enjoyed coaching, and I must say I think I enjoyed it more than playing.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't a gung-ho, it had to be my life sport for me, but it was good. I enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed the refereeing and the coaching more.
And when you say an industrial league, is that an adult league then?
Yeah,
right.
They were adults, and I'm sure we mentioned one of the fellows that you'll probably interview, Russ Briscoe, played in that league.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was a good league. The Hersack brothers, and Pete Cossack, and
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fairly serious, but at the end, it was a couple beers and everybody seemed to relax. But during the game, they got pretty rough, but it was good.
What were the sort of pressures for a referee at that sort of caliber? Did you ever get flack?
Oh yeah, but I think it was pretty well good-natured. They knew that you were trying to do your best, and nobody was they weren't out for a championship or anything. It was just you tried to do your best, and I really think I was probably a good referee.
Right. Right.
And I always sort of took pride in that, and I think they respected that. And so no, we never really had any problems. You just had to get off the ice first. That's all.
You mentioned that you played other sports as well. You played soccer and baseball and.
Well, not so much soccer, but some baseball with the New Westminster Luckies, which was a senior team in Westminster, and played quite a bit of softball with the Dunsmuir Hotel in the softball league that Senior A and Senior B. There was Army Navy Stores and some Vancouver teams, and a lot of really, really good softball players. I was just an average softball player, but I played with some really good guys. Gordy Hartley, unfortunately he's not with us anymore, but he was probably one of the first big-time windmill pitchers. And, of course, Russ Briscoe, Mark Wald, who was a member of the well-known Rhythm Pals in Western music. That was good softball in New Westminster.
Was it?
Yeah, it was really good softball. They used to get big crowds up at Moody Park. There weren't any lights or anything then, but it was good softball.
What position did you play there?
Mostly left outside, but
no,
I played third base and shortstop and second base. Wherever they needed some fill-ins, I was there.
Right. And I forgot to ask you in hockey, what position did you play?
I was a defenseman. And,
okay.
It's funny because as a kid, I was about 165 pounds and about 5'10", and I was considered average. And now when I watch the Canucks, the smallest guy on the team, I think Ed Jovanowski is 6'3" or 4" and 230 pounds. And if you can't even make it as a forward today at 5'10". You're very lucky if you do. There are a few, Cliff Ronning and a few guys, but but at that time, we're talking a long time ago, that was an average size. Well, no, they were bigger, but I certainly wasn't the smallest defenseman.
Right. And I guess at that time, too, things have changed in the way you play defense in hockey. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about that, other than, when you're big, you can cover a lot more territory, right. But I think there, in a way, was more mid-ice body checking and hitting than there seems to be now. There's a lot of touching and grabbing and that, but you don't see the big hits that guys like, some of the big-time defensemen used to, Garth Bush and these guys who played for Toronto used to hit Ezenicky.
Right.
But, no, I don't know. I don't think it's changed that much.
No. So you played baseball, you played softball, and I guess you did that to compensate for no hockey in the summer. Is that right?
Yeah, it was just something to do, and we had a great team. It was called McWaters Billiards. Dave McWaters was the sponsor, and used to own the pool hall, the billiard hall, right above on the second floor at Church in Columbia. And he was a very famous roller skater in his day. And he sponsored our team, and I think we were a senior B level at that time, and as I mentioned, Gordie Hartley and Jerry Barnston and Irv Jacobson, and a lot of good players that went on to play really good softball played on that team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of fun, and you know, we never made any money. It wasn't, you didn't play to make any money. You just played to go out and enjoy it, and you know, hopefully try and win a championship.
And you get crowds.
Yeah, we used to get good crowds.
Yeah.
It was good.
It's amazing. Well, tell me a little bit about after you finished coaching and playing. You said you got married, right? And things
got
changed.
Married, yeah. Then I went in the sporting goods business.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I got in the sporting goods business. I was working with the city at the time, and 3 friends of mine had bought out the old Oscar Swanson's sporting goods business, and I used to hang around the store quite a bit, and then finally one of the fellows wanted to get out of it, and so I said, okay, I'll buy you out, and so I made an agreement with him, bought him out, and about 3 months later, Swanson's went bankrupt, and so I kind of lost everything there, but then I started out on my own up on 6th Street, at least with Wilf Hill, who used to be the manager of the Hillside Cubs. We went into partnership, a store in 6th Street, and after about 6 months, he didn't want to stay in the business anymore, so I was in it by myself and stayed in it for almost 17 or 18 years. It was very successful and
that long,
had a good business.
Yeah.
And ended up with 3 stores and a wholesale outlet, and which was really too much. And then after I got out of that retail business, I went and became a manufacturer's agent for sporting goods and skis and things like that.
Right. I've heard a few of the people that I've interviewed have talked about how they go up to Peterson's and get lacrosse sticks or things like that. So, I mean, in a sense, how did you support sports in New Westminster through having a store like that?
Well, I guess one of the big things was the New Westminster Royals, when Hal Lako was the general manager and coach, they had their office in my store. And they used to sell the tickets for the games, and and Hal used to do his business there, and we used to get an awful lot of people coming in for tickets, and we were also the agents for Hicks Ticket Bureau, who used to handle all the major attractions coming into the lower mainland, like Harlem Globetrotters and other ice capades and things like that. So we had a lot of people coming in the store, and a lot of people probably remember that. We also later on supplied the Adnacks and the Salmon Bellies, Jack Bolton and Harry McKnight, and we supplied all their equipment. We supplied equipment for the Pacific Coast Soccer League, the local Little League clubs, Babe Ruth. So we had a pretty good business going, and it was a good run for 15 years.
I bet. I talked to a guy, Bill Gyrie, the other day.
Yeah, I know
he
Bill.
said, I guess that was Junior B lacrosse he was with.
He could have been, yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about getting lacrosse sticks from you guys. And
well, we used to bring in, which at that time when we were in the business, was the Martin lacrosse stick. There were Martins and Logans, and the only place you could get these would be from the Indians in the Ohsweken Indian Reserve in Ontario. Oh. And that's what the seniors had to have. They had to have Martin or Logans. Martin Martin was the preferred stick. But in order to get them, you had to send money in advance. You had to say, if you're going to get a dozen sticks, you had to send, I think at that time we bought them for $10 a piece. And we'd have to send $120, and then about a month later, you would get 12 lacrosse sticks. And out of those 12, probably 3 or 4 would be good enough for the seniors.
Oh, really?
So, then you could, everybody else all the juniors had to have sticks, and kids wanted to have them, so you could always sell the balance, the culls.
Right.
but you probably have to bring in about 4 or 5 dozen sticks in order to supply the quality sticks that the seniors wanted.
Right, right.
And now, you know, I go to lacrosse games and I see them playing with plastic sticks with cord and everything. But in the 50s and 60s, if you were a lacrosse player, you had to have a Martin.
Right. And these were a wooden stick?
These were wooden, leather.
Right. And the hard leather basket, is that right? Or
well, the basket was leather, and then the guard was gut. Right. And then there was a really nice gentleman in town. You probably, somebody's talked about him, Ab Brown. He was a fireman, and he used to repair all these lacrosse sticks. And Ab used to come in once or twice a week and pick up all the sticks from the seniors and take them home, repair them, and he never charged a thing.
Really? It was just his...
It was his hobby, and I'm sure if you ask any old lacrosse players today, they'll be able to tell you some great stories about Ab Brown.
It's funny. I mean, I've heard a few people talk about how different members of this community contributed on a volunteer basis. Did you experience that, playing and having a sports store and things like that?
Well, you know, coaching Little League and minor hockey and refereeing, and you know, that's, I think, was my contribution to pay back what I had received. But there were a lot of, like, you know, you mentioned Bill Jury. He gave a lot of his time. Jack Fulton, all these guys gave a lot to New Westminster. You know. Not expecting to get anything in return. It was just they either loved the game or they. All right. What, you know, Westminster was just a super town. It was the what they used to call the city of champions. And you know, when you figure the New Westminster Salmon Bellies have won the Mann Cup, I think, more than any other team in Canadian lacrosse, and there was good hockey teams, there were good baseball teams, good softball teams. They've had a great history.
Sounds like a source of community pride, for sure.
I think so, yeah. You know, I can remember being, my family would, when we didn't have the money to go to pay for the lacrosse games in the early or the late 30s, I guess, so we would go up and hang around till halftime, and then they let you in for free. And we would go in and watch these games and sit in, because they were so crowded. You'd have to sit on the steps, and but you know, to go into that arena and see 4,800 people just jammed in there was pretty exciting.
And loud, I'm sure.
And loud, yeah. And warm.
And warm.
Yeah.
I bet, yeah, in the summer. So tell me a little bit, you talked a bit about the Salmon Bellies audiences. What about when you played hockey? In the minor hockey, in the younger hockey, would it have been just family and friends type thing, or? As
it is today. It was just family and friends, and you know, as a kid, the big thrill of your season would be to play 5 minutes in between periods of a senior hockey game.
Oh, and you
get out there and you do your 5-minute stint, and that would be it. But as far as getting people out to minor hockey, no, you wouldn't.
Right.
You know, we'd get maybe 300-400 people out to junior hockey games. It wasn't the caliber of junior hockey that the Bruins played. The Bruins, you know, that was a pretty good hockey team. The junior hockey in my era was good minor hockey, but it wasn't anything like you know, the juniors at that time were almost professional. They were all being paid and looked after. And our kids were going to school and doing it because they wanted to play.
Right. Sounds like it. But even 300 or 400 people is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, really, when you think about it.
You got a lot of friends and relatives.
I guess so. Have you been to any minor hockey, you know, games recently over the last 20, 30 years?
Oh, in that span, certainly, but not in the last 10 years. I really,
No.
I don't have any immediate interest. My grandchildren are not quite there yet, and
Right.
when my son stopped playing in juvenile, that was about the end of the minor hockey. But I always like to know what's happening, and I follow the the stats, the scores in the paper every day, and see what's happening to all the junior teams, and of course, follow the Canucks.
Right, right. Did you guys have any rivalries when you played in New Westminster?
Well, there would certainly be a rivalry with in junior and senior B hockey with Nanaimo and UBC, the UBC Thunderbirds. I know and also the Vancouver White Spots. They had guys like Joe Marcoux and that, who was kind of like he was a wild man and crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy. And there were the two Kirk brothers in Wendell and Jack Kirk in Nanaimo, who were very good hockey players, and Normie played with the Royals, and eventually. And yeah, there was a lot of rivalry, and we had really good times. Nobody ever really got hurt, and of course there weren't any helmets, there weren't mouth guards, there weren't face masks, and it's amazing that people didn't get injured more.
Right, right. Yeah, no. When did you start wearing helmets, or did you ever wear helmets?
No. When I had the store, I supplied the first helmets for the minor lacrosse, and they were made by Cooper, the manufacturing company, which is now owned by CCM, but they were called SK-10s, and all they were really a piece of plastic across the back of your head and a piece across the front, and the top was open with some straps. And that was the first helmet. And in Little League, of course, they wore helmets, and it wasn't until much later that the major league teams adopted the helmets. And,
well, I remember watching hockey in the 70s, and some of them wouldn't wear helmets.
No, it wasn't. You weren't macho if you wore a helmet and all that.
Right.
So, eventually they realized because of the injuries that you had to do it. And but yeah, there were a lot of guys I can remember watching on TV, hockey players in the NHL who wouldn't wear helmets.
And I've seen a lot of those guys. They're toothless too.
Yeah, yeah. I've lost a few teeth. So.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like most of you guys have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Have you noticed a difference between what it was like back then in sports to what it's like now? Well, let's take minor hockey for instance.
Well, I'm not really up to what's happening in minor hockey other than what I read in the paper about fathers fighting with each other and all this sort of stuff, and getting on to referees. And I don't think we really experienced that as much. There were always a few parents that were, I know when I was coaching, they would come up and say, well, how come my son's not playing? And you try and explain why he's not playing. But today, I think because of the kids and the chance to get to the NHL, with 26 teams or whatever it is, 28, if the kids got any ability, they're going to push them and really push them. But no, I think the parents that I work with were always great, and they'd drive kids around, as they still do today, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But they did it just for the fun of it. They wanted to see their kids do well, and I don't think there was any of them that ever figured that their kids would ever have a shot at playing in the NHL or playing at a higher level. They just did it because they were proud of their kids, and they wanted to see them do well.
Right.
I think today it's much more competitive.
It is, eh?
It's yeah. I mean, you read and you hear some of the stories. It's unbelievable what some of these parents will do.
Well, and do you think there's more opportunity for kids now or not? I mean, there's more kids playing. I mean, there might be more teams, but there's more kids, aren't there?
Well, there's more NHL teams, but then if you take the number of kids that are playing, I don't know whether it's any easier to get to the NHL now than when it was, a long time ago. Certainly, if you were outstanding, like a Gordie Howe, these kind of guys in junior, you'd get taken up right away. And today, other than Gretzky, I don't think anybody really has made any mark jumping from junior to to the Western Hockey or to the WHA and then to the NHL.
Really, hey?
Yeah, I think it's I would think it's probably even. I think there are more average hockey players playing in the NHL today than there would have been with the 6 teams.
Right.
I think when you had those 6 teams, you had pretty good players.
Yeah. You had more good players to choose from, I guess, too, right? Yeah. What did you, in your sports life, what did you enjoy most about sports?
Well, right now I'm a big time baseball fan, and I just I'm a Blue Jay, or my wife is a Blue Jay fan, and I am too, but I'm truly a Yankee fan. You don't have many friends if you're a Yankee fan, but I don't know. I think it's just the excitement. It's if you don't take the game too seriously, if you just take it for what it is, everybody tries to do their best, and every once in a while you hit the big one or you make the big catch, and that's the exciting part. But there are times when there's the bonehead play, and that's the game. If every game was played perfectly, nobody would watch it,
right? Because
you knew the outcome. So you have to have the oddball things happening to make the game exciting. And I think I just enjoy being a spectator.
Oh, you do, hey?
Yeah. And not being really good at anything, but really being able to enjoy. I think I can appreciate all the things that happen in a ball game or in a hockey game, and the referees' calls and all that stuff, because you've had that little bit of experience, and that's why I think it's good for really kids today to not necessarily have to be the best, but partake and play all the sports and get a feel of what happens in a game. Yeah, I think that's what I enjoy about it.
Yeah. Good. Tell me a little bit about some memorable events that stick out in your mind about when you played hockey. I mean, you've mentioned the Nanaimo Clippers, the championships there, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't have too many memorable things in my career, but I can tell you one thing that I never will forget when we were playing in the first Bantam championship that I ever played in, and Ed Downey was coaching, and I had been a stick boy and a water boy, and on other older teams, and had always been amazed at the athletic smell in the dressing room of the wintergreen and the liniment and the Sloan's liniment. So this time when we were over in Nanaimo, I thought, oh boy, I just got to smell like a real hockey player. So a couple of us got some Sloan's liniment and wintergreen and mixed it together, and then just rubbed it all over our bodies. I mean all over our bodies. And at about the start of the second period, we had to go in and we had to get back into the showers and shower all that off, because that Sloan's liniment was really good. So I guess that's sort of the memorable moment in my career, but something I'll never never forget is trying to emulate a real pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, we in lacrosse, we won a couple of BC championships with the old Westminster Ironworks, where Doug Stout was the coach, Buddy Urquhart, and a lot of those players on that team played for the Salmon Bellies and Adnacks for years.
Mm.
Gordy Cameron and Ira Chidlow.
Mm.
So that was a good team, and then of course getting drafted was a highlight of my career, I guess. And,
yeah.
Not too many major championships in my life, but it was all it was something you always felt good about at the end of a season. You know, whether you won or whether you lost, you sort of had a good feel about it, and I think that was important.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier a little bit about leaving New Westminster and going to Alberta, and then going to Baltimore. Is that right?
Right.
After that,
yeah.
What was it like going to an American city on the other side of the country?
Well, it was pretty exciting, actually. You know, because you were on your way to the NHL, and you know, you had to have the suits and clothes, and you had to act like a hockey player, and just as an aside, I can remember going down and watching the Baltimore Colts practice, and watching what was his name, famous quarterback Y.A. Tittle, and that was a highlight. You know, here a kid from Westminster gets to see Y.A. Tittle, who was kind of big time at that time.
In Baltimore.
In Baltimore, yeah. But going to Lethbridge was a real eye opener. I mean, that for a kid who, you know, was never cold in the wintertime, going to Lethbridge, and we stayed with a family in Lethbridge, the Harold family. I stayed with his name will come to me, but he was the coach for Tiger Williams up in Swift Current after he got out of junior hockey. Dunn was his name, I think, Bill Dunn. Anyway, we had to share the same bed, and he smoked in bed. I didn't smoke. I was, you know, Mr. Clean, and it was just terrible. And in the sense that, you know, I wasn't used to that sort of life, and but it was a good experience, and you know, my first experience going into the dressing room here we first game, I guess, or first practice, I can't remember which, it's so long ago, but here we had a big pot-bellied stove in the middle of the dressing room. It was fired by wood, and the big-time guys on the team, there was a fellow named Howie Milford, who played in the Western League with Winnipeg. He was a really good hockey player. But I can remember him just sitting there in between periods, just spitting on the stove, and I'd never seen anything like this in my life. You know, there was a stove in a dressing room, and it was so bloody cold that that's the way it was in those arenas.
Well, it's a contrast between Lethbridge and New West, too, hey?
Yeah. At least we had hot air heat, but there it was done by a stove. And, you know, that's the way it was. But it was an eye opener. I can remember coming home at Christmas from Lethbridge, and I'm really glad to be back in New Westminster, and then going back again. And, yeah, it was pretty good.
What were these arenas? I mean, places like Lethbridge, I mean, their hockey tradition goes way back. I mean, they played hockey in the ponds and stuff like that. What was the difference between the rinks there and the rink, say, in New Westminster?
Well, other than the pot-bellied stove, I guess there wasn't much difference. I mean, the rinks were the same, but
right.
They used to get, you know, the Western Hockey League was a major hockey league. It was pretty good hockey, and they used to pack the places, and big headlines in the papers, and all that sort of stuff. So it was sort of the game in town. There was the senior team was called the Lethbridge Maple Leafs, and we were the junior team, and both used to sell out all the games.
Really?
Yeah. Of course, there wasn't anything else to do in Lethbridge. You know, I mean,
no winter.
Throw snowballs at each other. That was about it.
I guess so. Tell me a little bit about friendships that have been formed because of sports.
Well, you know, I really can't think of any major ones. A really good friend, Gord Cameron, and lacrosse, and Bill Calvick. It's like all friendships, you know. When you're really doing something together, it's a great experience. And then, as your lives, one or the other, change. You know, you get married, you move away, and you don't have the contact with those people. But I still keep in contact with a lot of them. But I don't have any really friends that I would call every other day or anything like that.
Right.
You know, it's real good friends that I've made along the way, and unfortunately a lot of them have died. Yeah, you know, life changes and life goes on.
Do you ever find yourself bumping into any of these guys or girls, I guess, from New Westminster?
Well, there weren't too many girls playing sports at that time. Nothing like it is today.
Right.
But I'm a realtor, and I just sold one of my good friends' apartment over in Fleetwood. A fellow, Les Stevens, that I played with, and when I was in the sporting goods store, he worked in one of the stores that I had, and so yeah, these acquaintances just keep popping up. And it happens.
What sort of impact has sports had on your life?
Well, I think it certainly got me interested in going into the sporting goods business, which was probably the happiest time of my life when I was in the sporting goods business. And, you know, you could be, you know, sort of offhand and say the fair play and everything that you learn about in sports, I think was, I still adhere to that. But I think the sporting goods business was probably
right.
what I gained out of it.
Right. Do you feel like in a place like New Westminster, do you think that sports is an important component?
Well, I think it would be in any community. You know, I'm not that close to it anymore, but I do feel sad when I go to an occasional lacrosse game and see, you know, 300 or 400 people at a major sport, and there's not any good hockey, you know, junior level hockey. I don't think there's any softball anymore. It's, you know, I think, unfortunately, Westminster has sort of, other than the lacrosse, there's not much happening in Westminster anymore.
Right. And when you were growing up there, it was a different story.
Yeah, I mean, soccer, they had the Royals, the Westminster Royals. They had the Westminster Royals in hockey. They had the Sandbellies, the Adnacks. They had junior hockey. They had softball. You know, it was a good thing. But of course, you know, they didn't have television, and they didn't have all these other things that take the people's time and money. And like, you know, I'm a musician, an amateur musician, and I have pictures and records and everything of bands that played concerts in the 30s and 40s, and they would get thousands of people. Now I play in concert bands here in the Lower Mainland, and we're lucky if we get more people than are in the band to come out and watch, because they have so many other things to do. You know, so it's really kind of unfortunate. And I don't think it's just New Westminster. Vancouver's the same. There's not that much amateur sport that gets recognition anymore.
Good. apart from that, we're pretty much done the interview. Is there anything you feel I might have missed or you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. If you find that you want a little more, information about the little things about minor hockey and that we've skipped over, maybe we can do it again and
sure,
and add a few things in here and there. But
sure.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Earle.